Well, I think I'll just allow people in as they come in, but David, I'd like to turn it over to you and thank you once again.
Okay. Everybody can see the first slide?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can make this larger. Hold on.
There you go. There's the Zoom.
All right. Okay, so our focus today is on Morocco and the city of Fez. And I just wanted to get some idea of, has anybody been to Morocco?
Yes. I seem to be the only one that's ever been anywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, did you get to Fez?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm looking at the Reef Mountains. I remember driving.
I'm sorry?
I said I was looking at the Reef Mountains and I remember driving over them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I like, I've been to Morocco twice. One of the things I like so much about it is the diversity of the physical geography. I mean, you can get any kind of climate you want in that country. Most striking, of course, are the mountains.
Right.
Here's the high Atlas mountains, and then there's the middle Atlas and the anti-Atlas. So it's a spine that runs right up the country. The Reef Mountains are up north as well. They're not as high as the Atlas. Then you have a whole central plain where a lot of the agriculture takes place and where the major cities on the interior are. And then you have the coast, beaches and whatever. So it's very diverse, and I'll show you some photographs of it. And quite beautiful, I think. Okay, here's a modern map, and I just wanted to locate for you some of the major cities. Here's Fez, and you can spell it with an S or a Z, depending on what you want. And Marrakesh, farther down. Now, these two cities have a old section, a Medina section, which is supported by UNESCO to stay exactly the way it was in the Middle Ages, so that there are no cars. Everything that's made is made by hand. So it's just like stepping back into the Middle Ages. It's quite remarkable. And I really enjoyed it tremendously. Ouarzazate is just at the beginning of the desert, which is right in here, and it goes all the way to the Sahara Desert. And then along the coast, you have the capital Rabat and Casablanca and Agadir. All right, so here are the Atlas Mountains, and you see a Berber village at the foot of one of the mountains. Now we'll get into
David, could I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You were trying to enlarge that. Is there a way to take the default column that's to the right and squeeze that? Because what's happening when you enlarge it, I think you're losing the far right side of your photo.
Oh, well then let me just bring it back to 125.
Well, if you take and put your arrow on the line.
Yeah, that's what I thought you could do.
What do you want me to do?
Put your cursor right on the line between the white and the light gray.
Yeah.
And you should get a two-headed arrow. If you get a two-headed arrow, you can then move
let me try it again here. All right, so can I move this? So that
Put your cursor on the line between
this line?
The next one, the hair over to the right.
To the right?
That's the left. That's the left.
Well, I can't go any farther.
Right. Okay, keep that right there.
Yeah.
And you're not getting a double-headed arrow.
Yeah. All right. Look,
No.
I'm not sure what to do. So let's.
Don't worry about it.
125, I think, will be good enough.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. So
I 140. You can type in, can't you?
what?
You got it.
All right.
Good.
All right. In the mountains, they have some beautiful forests. This is a cedar tree. So there is woodworking here. People think Morocco, they think it's a desert. Well, it's just not. Most of it is not desert, actually. And here's the high Atlas, and there's actually skiing in Morocco in the Atlas Mountains.
Really?
I rented a car and drove into the mountains. I mean, it was quite amazing.
It looks beautiful.
It is beautiful. Now the rivers. There are several rivers, and like in Spain, with Cordoba being on the Guadalquivir River, Fez is also on a river, the Fez River. This is a canal going off the river and taking water into the city. Here's another shot of the river, and you can see here an old water wheel. See it?
Yep.
Okay. The beaches are gorgeous, and they have, you know, if you want to stay in a fancy place, you can do that, or you want to stay in a fishing village, you can do that. The desert. Now, if you go to the east of the Atlas Mountains, hardly any rainfall gets beyond the mountains. It's sort of, you know, like what happens in other areas, like the Himalayas, where it just doesn't, rain doesn't get very far beyond them. And so you end up with this sand. Now, this goes all the way from Morocco to Egypt. So
Excuse me, is that the actual color of the sand?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, that's with the sunlight on it.
Yeah. Oh,
You don't want to get lost because, you know, look out.
Is this where they ski the sand slopes?
What? No, they ski in, I don't know whether they ski the sand, but I don't know.
There are places that are known for skiing the sand slopes.
Really? Okay.
This looked like a perfect place to do it.
Okay, I didn't know about that. All right, now let's talk about the people. The majority of the people are Berbers. These were the people that were there before the Arabs came in to conquer North Africa and then ultimately into Spain in the early 8th century. And they have their own language that's separate from Arabic, completely unrelated to Arabic. Although the population, for the most part now, speaks, if you're a Berber, you speak Berber and you speak Arabic, and many of them speak French as well. Notice that the women are not covered. And each of the Berbers.
I was thinking why French, because they're so close to Spain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's been a close connection between Spain and Morocco in the medieval times. I mean,
Right.
And we'll get into that in a bit.
Okay.
Each of the Berber tribes have their own particular rug patterns. Okay, it's almost village by village. It's quite a beautiful craft. Now here, I think these are the coolest Berbers. These are called the Tuaregs, and they're desert people, and they go all across the Sahara. So you'll find them going from Morocco all the way to Egypt, and they're bringing various products, whatever, into the desert regions of Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt. And they call them the blue men. So when I was there, I went to a shop. So I put on one of these blue things, you know, but I still look like this Jewish kid from Brooklyn. So I couldn't pull it off, but I thought they were cool. Now,
what are they considered Arab? What religion?
No, they're Berbers.
Berber.
They're not Arabs. I mean, the Arabs per se came from Arabia, okay, and they spread out, okay, from Arabia across North Africa and into the Mediterranean, and they mixed with the population, whatever, and the language became, you know, adopted, but you know, ethnically speaking, you know, the Egyptian, let's say the Egyptians, they're not the same as the Arabs, even though now, because everybody speaks Arabic, we talk about the Arab lands.
Mhm.
Actually, ethnically, the Egyptians are called Hamitic people. So if you look at the genes, they're not the same as the people that came from Arabia. But in any case, the actual numbers of Arab people that came in with the conquest is relatively small, just a few percentage of the population. The rest of the population are Berbers who are already there, and then a small percentage, less than 1%, were Jews. And we'll talk about the Jews, but some Jews were there from Roman times. I mean, the Morocco was the capital of Roman North Africa, or one of the capitals of Roman North Africa, and Jews were there from that time on. And many of them came after the Arab conquest, because the Arab society, the Muslim society, was much better for Jews than the Christian society. So
David, can we get back? Can we go back? Can we go back to the blue men? Because when I was there, I don't know if maybe their dyes are better now, but the guys, their skin actually turned blue from the dye and all the fabric.
That's one of the reasons why they're called the blue men, because they actually are,
they actually turn, yeah.
We'll get into the dyes, but they're using the old method of dyeing.
Right.
So if you sweat into this garment, you do a lot of sweating, then you're going to pick up some of the color of the dye.
But this guy in this photo isn't blue. That's what is so striking to me, because
but we don't know what's underneath the garment. I mean,
you're only seeing his wrist.
Yeah, wrist and his face, face is, Anyway, so here's Fez. And Fez was founded in the 8th century, soon after the Arab conquest, and they built a retaining wall around the city, on and near a river. Here's another shot of the wall. This is actually a Jewish cemetery, which is outside of the city wall. Now, this cemetery is not from the 12th century. It's later. One of the other striking things about both Marrakesh and Fez were the gates.
Yep.
I mean, I just loved them. I mean, just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. All of this tile work, stone carving. And this happens to be the gate that's closest to the old part of the city, the Medina, the area that is protected by the UNESCO.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
Yeah.
Here's a close-up.
Oh my God, the detail, the interest. Oh, it's
Right.
gorgeous.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you walk right in to the Medina, to the market area from this gate. So this is another shot of the wall. Now, a lot of the old city looks like this. Okay, it's narrow streets. There are no cars allowed here. There's very little machinery of any sort. They're donkeys that you want to get something moved from one place to another. You use a donkey or a hand cart. So it really is like being in the Middle Ages. This is called a jalaba, which is typical wear in Muslim countries. Now, talk about dye. Did you see this? These are the old ways of dyeing clothes. They're vats filled with, most of it is dye that's from vegetable origin, okay? And these guys jump right in the vats.
Oh.
Well,
Oh my God.
yeah, right? They're jumping in the vats and, moving the either cotton or wool or whatever they're doing. And these guys are, I mean, I could not believe it when I saw it. And, they also tan leather like this.
Oy vey.
and they use urine as one of the things to tan the
Oy.
leather.
Huh.
And it just smells from high heaven. I don't get it.
It's so lovely. It's a lovely picture. Oh, good God.
Yeah. Now, ceramics is another big thing in Morocco and goes all the way back, from the Islamic conquest. This actually is part of a sink. Now, one trip I took was with my brother-in-law. He was concerned that the ceramics were not going to be shipped back without being chipped or broken because they were too big to bring with us. So the guy in the shop turned it over and jumped up and down on it to show how strong it was. He couldn't break it by jumping on it. So we were sold. We were sold. And this is
Wow.
the dried fruits and other.
Oh my
condiments.
God.
Yeah, and it really is like stepping back in time. It's just great, and there are other Muslim countries that have this. I mean, you can see it even in Jerusalem in the old city, but it's just I think it's great, and it's delicious too. I mean, I love the fruits. Now, this is copper ware. Again, notice they're making it hand. They're banging it out by hand. This is bronze work. They're famous for it. Now, the Jews actually were especially famous for metal work, and we'll get into that in a bit. Here's some of the woodwork. This is a ceiling of a madrasa, which is a Muslim school.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful stuff. Here's stonework. Here's a close-up of some of the stonework.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Gorgeous. Now, here's the
Oh,
tile.
what is that? Oh.
This is tile work here, stonework here. And as you know, in Islamic countries, you're not allowed to show the human form or even the animal form. No. So they have these patterns that they, and you can have script, if you want, words, that's not a problem. But they have a particular kind of work called the zelig in Morocco. This is typical Moroccan stuff. And they make each one of these tiles separate. Each one is made separately. They're not mass produced. They don't have exactly the same color and whatever. And it's very labor intensive, but quite unusual. Here's a fountain with the zelig work.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Gorgeous stuff. Now, people don't think about stained glass in Islamic countries, but in fact, they do produce stained glass. And this is a madrasa. So that surprised me when I first saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here is the oldest university on the planet, called the Al-Kairouan, and it was founded in the 10th century. It's the oldest university, and it's ongoing. It continues.
Is it still in existence?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And we don't know exactly where Maimonides studied. We know that he studied medicine while he was in Fez, but it's highly likely it was here because this was the best. This is the best of the best. This is the courtyard, and it's just a spectacular place. This reminds me, anyway, of Granada. The Alhambra. What?
The Alhambra?
Alhambra, right?
Yeah.
And another picture of it. Tile work.
That's all tile on the floor?
Yeah, that's all tile.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you know what fields of study they pursue there?
You mean today or back then?
No, currently, if they're still,
Yeah, I know that it's, of course, philosophical and religious. I don't know whether they're still doing science and whatever. I don't know about that. So, I guess I could look it up.
just was wondering.
Yeah, because they do have modern universities in Morocco now.
Uh-huh.
But these places had both a university and a mosque attached. Okay, so there's, I'll show you the mosque. This is the ceiling over the gate, the main entrance to the mosque.
Oh, good God.
Yeah.
Huh.
And all these pieces are individual?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Now, here's the mosque. This is wood here, and you can see these doors, wooden doors. I mean, it's just enormous, okay? The thousands of people could worship in this mosque. Now, here are the steps that lead up to the library and to the university, okay? And this is the entrance, wooden entrance. And here's the library. The books are over out of sight here, but this is the study area. And this is still used. Again, I can't tell you, other than religious and philosophical things, what's being studied, but it's still actively used. Now, part of the scientific work of any Islamic university was astronomy, mathematics, and this is an astrolabe in the university, okay, which is used for latitude and longitude and other kinds of things. And this went from the Islamic area to the Christian area and was still in use at the time of, the exploration of the world by the Portuguese and the Spanish. And this is a clock. It's a water clock.
A water clock?
It's a water clock, and actually, this is a copy of the clock that was in Al Cairo. They reconstructed it from records. I don't know exactly how it works, but essentially, using water to tell time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they granted medical degrees, and here is a degree from the beginning of the 13th century, just after Maimonides died. But this is a medical degree saying that you studied in Cairo and you're allowed to practice medicine. Now, what about the Jews of Fez, which is second part of our talk today? This is the gate that led into the part of the city that had most of the Jews. And they could live anywhere they wanted. It wasn't that it wasn't like, they had to live there. But again, just like in Cordoba, many of the Jews wanted to live with other Jews. A lot of the synagogues were there, although in Fez there were synagogues that were outside of the area as well. And here's a picture of a typical Jewish couple. This is from the late 19th century. Now, one of the things about the Jews of Morocco, other than their clothing, and even their clothing was not that different from the indigenous people. Okay, they were accepted as part of the society. They were, yes, they were different religions, but the people were comfortable for the most part, with some exceptions in terms of periods of time. And
he has a cigarette in his hand.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes.
That's right. with a couple of exceptions, periods that were brief, where there was some anti-Jewish feeling. And one period happened to coincide with the time that Maimonides was in Fez. It was a group called the Almahads, who were Berber, and they were extremists. They were not typical of the general population. And they took over Morocco, and they basically said, Jews and Christians, you either convert or you're out. And then they went into Spain, and they did the same thing in Spain. Now, Maimonides and his father, the rest of his family, were in Spain. They actually fled, and they fled to Morocco. And you say to yourself, what are they fleeing to Morocco for? Well, the Almohads had already, in their mind, taken care of the Jewish population, most of whom pretended that they were converted. And so by going there was less vigilance on the part of the Almohads. This was their capital. They just felt they had already taken care of it. So if you came in, there was less chance that you would be suspect. So that's why they went there. And they also went there because they were people that they knew there, scholars and whatever that they knew. But during this time, they had to pretend that they were Muslims.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, later in Maimonides' life, this came up again, and we'll get into it when we talk about Egypt. Now, this is an unusual group of people. These are Berber Jews. These are people who converted to Judaism, okay? Berbers. Did they convert before the Islam? Some of them did. And they certainly were not the bulk of Jews. They were a small percentage. But there are villages still in Morocco, in the mountains, where you go in there, and there's synagogues. There's no Jews anymore, but there's synagogues, there's mikvahs, the whole thing. And they are still using designs for their carpets that the Jewish Berbers used. So we actually bought a small carpet with that a Jewish design to it. But I just think it's interesting. Now these people, the Berbers, Jews, as well as the other bulk of Jews, left Morocco in 1948. There were 250,000 Jews in Morocco. They left because of the state of Israel. The king of Morocco did not want them to leave, but so they went to Israel, they went to France, and they went to the United States.
From most likely probably they went to New York and the big coastal cities.
Yeah, they did. And we'll get into actually we can, this is actually a picture of a Jewish wedding. This is a Eugene Delacroix picture. And it's quite exotic, and you can just see. I mean, you're looking at these people. You can't tell them from Berbers or.
Looks like they had a lot to drink.
What?
Looks like they had a lot to drink.
Yeah, sure.
It was a good.
Well, it was a Jewish wedding. What do you want?
That's right. Now let's talk a little bit about gold and silver, because if you go to Morocco today, the jewelers will tell you that rarely do they equal the artisanship of the Jews who left. In other words, they were known throughout the country as being the premier metal workers, gold and silver. And the king of Morocco often commissioned them to, they built the doors in several of his palaces. They're made out of bronze. I mean, it's just beautiful stuff. So this was one of their specialties. And, they obviously took it with them when they left. And so if you go to Israel, there are people that are still making Moroccan style gold and silver work for people that were, came in 48. And now let's talk about some of the famous Jewish people who lived in Morocco, two in particular. One is Dunash ben Labrat, who was a poet in the 10th century. He was famous for essentially changing the metering of Jewish poetry so that it mirrored Arab poetry, okay? And so in that way, gained acceptance to some degree among the Arabs. So they had these poetry contests often where people would get up and recite their poems. And so, and there's one particular poem called the Dror Yikra, which is still famous to this day. If you put in this in YouTube, you will see Sephardic tunes. You'll see this poem being put to the modern songs like Scarborough Fair. I mean, it's really popular in Israel. So let's just take a look at it. This is the first stanza. Freedom shall he proclaim for his sons and daughters, and will keep you as the apple of his eye. Pleasant is your name and will not cease to be, repose and rest on Sabbath day. So it's about the Sabbath. And it's quite beautiful. If we have the time, I'll play a couple of versions of this. Or do you want to hear it now?
That sounds good.
All right, hold on. Hopefully this will come out. You can hear it. Here's the Sephardic. All right, now for something completely different. Where is this now?
Simon and Garfunkel.
Oh my God.
Scarborough Fair.
That's
Oh, my
right.
goodness.
You got it. All right. Let's see. So if you go on YouTube, you will see a plethora of examples of this song. It's just real. It's a big hit in Israel to this day. All right. Now, we've been talking about Maimonides, and we'll spend more time on him when we get to Cairo, because that's where he wrote his most famous works. But let's just talk a bit about his time in Morocco. He came to Fez at the age of 17, pretending to be a Muslim. And he left 10 years later to go to Israel, and then found that to be unpleasant and went to Egypt. The Crusaders were in Israel at this time. Now, a lot of his formative education in philosophy, science, literature, medicine was here. And like in his medical text, he often makes reference to Moroccan doctors or scientists or philosophers. So it was an important period of time, but they were never really comfortable. You know, they were worried that somehow they were going to be, I don't know, ratted out by somebody, and they ended up leaving because of that fear. Now, if you go there, there is a restaurant which is where Maimonides lived. It's called Chez Maimonides, and it is a combination Chinese and Moroccan
Wow.
restaurant.
That's funny.
This is what they did to his house. And this is what it looks like on the inside.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's a traditional tagine ceramic. I like their food. Very good. All right, so let's just talk about some of the ideas that Maimonides had. We're just do a couple of minutes, and then we'll get into it in more depth in 2 weeks. So what some of the quotes about God. I believe with perfect faith that the Creator, blessed be his name, is not a body, and that he is free from all accidents of matter, and that he has not any form whatsoever. Now, why is that in some ways a controversial statement?
Well, I think that prior, in the Torah, we always personified God as if he were, a he, it, a thing, a person.
Right, a person with a hand.
Yeah.
And, all of this kinds of things. And Maimonides basically said, this isn't true. But the way he got around it is he said that the people who wrote the Bible knew that God was not in the form of a person, but in trying to convey ideas, the people, couldn't get their minds around the concept of formlessness. So he's saying that the people who wrote it already knew. Now, this obviously isn't true, but you cannot say somebody was wrong, okay, in the sense that they made mistakes. Who wrote the Bible? You can't do that. So he reinterprets what it means, but and he does this often. He's making really changes, but pretending that they're not. They're not real changes. Okay, this was always the way it was. It was always what the writers said, what they believed. If God were corporeal, he would consist of atoms and would not be one. Or he would be comparable to other beings, but a comparison implies the existence of similar and of dissimilar elements, and God would thus not be one. A corporal God would be finite, and an external power would be required to define those limits. The same kind of thoughts. It is man's duty to love and to fear God. I'm over here. Even without hope of reward or fear of punishment. God cannot be compared to anything. Note this. All attributes ascribed to God are attributes of his acts and do not imply that God has any qualities. All right, so that's a key element in his thinking. He wanted to move away people's vision of God as this little guy in the sky who's, watching and doing things for us. He just felt that was childlike. Miracles. The laws remain undisturbed. Apparent exceptions, the miracles, originate in these laws, although man is unable to perceive the causal. So he's basically saying that there is a scientific explanation for miracles. It's just that we don't know the science yet. He really does not like this kind of magical thinking that people get into. He hated astrology. just thought it was just bunk. And so he's a scientist. He believes in science. He believes in evidence.
I have a thing. Miracles are God's way of working anonymously.
Uh-huh.
Think about that.
All right. I think I'm going to stop here and give time for questions or comments or whatever, and we'll continue with Maimonides next time.
Maybe you'll talk about it, but how long did he live in Israel before moving to Egypt?
Less than a year.
Oh, wow.
He was right out of there when he saw what it was like. I mean, the Crusaders were very, very bad to Jews.
Uh-huh.
I mean, just to give you an example, when they
What else is new?
when they entered Jerusalem, they killed every Jew there.
Huh.
So I mean, there were Jews who lived there, but they were really under the gun, so to speak, and it was not a pleasant place to live if you were Jewish. Any other questions or comments?
Was he recognized as the multifaceted scholar that he was in his lifetime?
Yes, he was. And, he at times ruffled the feathers of some establishment Jews. For example, there was a big business in the Middle Ages. If you had a question that you needed resolved, a question of Jewish law, there were certain academies in Iraq that you would send the question to with money, and then you would get an answer back from these academies. It's called responsa. Well, when Maimonides wrote the Mishneh Torah, which is many people believe was the greatest work summarizing Jewish law and customs ever written, this was to be able for people to solve their own questions rather than have to rely on rabbinical expertise and also having to pay for religious expertise. Maimonides felt that people that were teaching Jewish religion should do it for free. And he never took a salary. He supported himself at being a physician. So this, ruffled some feathers, obviously, and there were other examples. But generally speaking, I mean, he was renowned before his death all over the Mediterranean world, wherever Jews were. And his philosophical works were studied by Christians. The Guide to the Perplexed, as we'll get into later, was studied in depth. By Christian theologians. His textbooks were used in medical schools for hundreds of years in Europe. So, he had an amazing effect both in his life and afterwards. Anything else?
You may have mentioned this before, but did he have a family? Did he?
Yeah, he did. I mean, we know he had probably 2 wives, although we don't know what their names were. And he had a son. He had a brother, David, who we'll see played an important role in his life when we get to Egypt. So that's what we know. But we don't know a lot, actually. Especially we don't know anything about the women. Which was the way it was in the Middle Ages. They were hardly talked about. All right, so we'll adjourn for now and reassemble in 2 weeks.
Right.
This was very, very interesting. Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure.
And, I don't know if you'd be up to it, David, but I can envision maybe down the road, perhaps in the fall or in the spring, when we have the majority of the temple members back, maybe doing something at the temple, showing those gorgeous maps and sceneries of those various countries an armchair traveler type of thing, I think that would appeal to a lot of people.
Sure. Well, I mean, if I'm not, limited to just Jewish topics,
Right.
there's plenty of, I mean, I could give a whole lecture on Angkor Wat. I mean, that's one of my favorite places in the world.
Yeah.
Just gorgeous stuff. But, whatever you want, I'm sure I'll be able to.
Yeah, no, we could certainly do that. Well, we could talk about that, at an upcoming program meeting and look at it down the road.
Okay.
So our next one will be 2 weeks from today. It'll be Cairo in the 12th century. So now we're moving from Fez to Cairo, and that's where we'll hear more about his later life, where Maimonides had many of his accomplishments, as David indicated.
Right.